what are your resources that would help you to teach lessons like this, and what is in the second edition package. So are there any other questions before we do a quick tour? Okay, so let me just give me a second to open it up. What I did for you is you're going to get a sneak preview. What we did for those of you who might be familiar with Living by Chemistry, the first edition curriculum was a complete curriculum where the teacher materials were broken up by unit. And what we did is we wanted to work towards simplifying the package. So we've created what looks more like a traditional teacher wraparound edition for each lesson. But before I show you the features of the wrap, what I wanted to just point out is if I zoom in, and people can let me know, you're looking right now at a zoom in of the student textbook and what students will see after they've gone to class. And so I want to just point out to you that every lesson in Living by Chemistry in the student textbook directly relates to what they did in class. So this is different than traditional textbooks, which are often more of an encyclopedia of information that may or may not relate to the really engaging in-class lesson that you might have taught yourself or that you might have used from a curriculum like this. So students don't read this textbook the night before in preparation for a lecture. They actually read their textbook afterwards to review and reflect on what they learned. And what you'll notice is that when they're reading their textbook, they're seeing images, as you can see over here on the right. This chem catalyst image is appearing for them again. They're seeing the actual experiment talked about again for testing substances based on dissolving and conductivity. They are, again, looking at tables that classify substances into different groups. There are example problems and practice problems for students. So no matter what was taught that day, whether it be stoichiometry or gas laws or thermodynamics, and no matter how it was taught in class, whether it was a lab, a hands-on activity with some maybe cards or manipulatives, or perhaps it was just a worksheet, the students go home and reflect on that experience. You can see, if you continue through into the next lesson on types of bonding, that these images that were on their worksheets with the models of bonding and what's happening to the substances in terms of properties based on bonding is all reflected in the student textbook. And this was the image, I think, Angie, that you were mentioning about what happens when the substances are dissolved. And we're focusing in for students, as Dr. Stacy said, on what's happening at the atomic scale, what's happening at the scale of particles, and how is that related to what students are observing macroscopically, like in the laboratory or in the world around them. And again, every lesson ends with practice problems. One of the things I wanted to just quickly point out to you, for second edition, one of the things that we added in that was new, and this is at the end of the unit. For the end of the unit, we've expanded our unit review. We now have general review exercises, which are short answer or problems that would require work solutions. And we've also added an additional multiple choice standardized test prep so that there's an additional layer of assessment for students before the end of a unit. So that gives you a little sense of what happens when students go home and use the textbook. And now, for those of you that are familiar with the teacher guide, do not despair. Everything that was included in your teacher guides is now in the teacher edition, or it's a part of the teacher resource package. So you're not losing anything. If you have first edition and you're familiar with that, all of the great resources that you've had before are still available to you. They're just going to look different, and they're in a different form. And in addition to that, you'll get even more because we've added to this teacher edition some smaller features. One of them is called Differentiate, where we actually point out further ways to differentiate the lessons. All the lessons in Living by Chemistry were designed with differentiated instruction in mind, in the way that using guided inquiry and having students do hands-on experiences, having them look at models, write about what they see, talk about things in groups. All of these are helpful teaching methodologies for helping more students understand. All of that is still here and all that is still available, but you'll see now that it's all built into the teacher wrap. So this particular lab, the key ideas give you a sense of what's going to happen, in tomorrow's class. The lab is described here. You'll see, if you notice, throughout the teacher edition, we have what's called the teacher resource materials button. And this particular button lets you know that there's a downloadable item that goes with this. So, for example, there's a downloadable materials list. There's a transparency of this particular chem catalyst that you can show on the board. There's a PowerPoint presentation that goes with it. All of these items just to give you an example of Lesson 25, you have a materials list that you can download. You have a student worksheet, which, of course, you could send to your students or you can print out and have students work on during the class. For teachers, don't give this one out. This is the student worksheet with the answers included for you. So you can have something to use if you're going to be, if students are asking you about questions during their activity, or if you're going to be checking things after they've turned it in. We also have, and I wanted to point out here, a PowerPoint. Oops, that's the wrong PowerPoint. A PowerPoint for every lesson. So every lesson of Living by Chemistry, you can quickly look at this one. We've put in the information where if there was a chem catalyst question, you can display it. If you had things for preparation, it would be here. We put the key points and the discussion points, and we wrap up and give the check-in questions. So that's another way to display that information for students if you would rather do that. You can also, whenever there's an image, we provide something that you can make a transparency so that even if you were using an overhead projector, you could use it, or you could print it and hand it out to students. So these are some examples of the resources that you'll find. And let me just jump out of here. Sorry, just a minute. I have too many things open on my desktop. I'll jump back in here and kind of tour you through a little bit more of the teacher edition. So your every lesson begins with your preparation. The chem catalyst responses that students might give, all answers in the teacher edition are given in red, so those will be easy to notice. You'll see the entire lesson is spelled out. The chem catalyst goes first. During the explore section, this is where students would use the worksheet and work on this particular lab. And I actually am in the electroplating lab, so let me go back a couple of pages for you so you can reflect on what we did just look at. So in classifying substances, here we go. Here's our lab that we just did. And so that entire lab, the whole setup of the wires, if you were using the holiday lights, how to make the conductivity tester, all of this information is there for you. So everything that you need as a teacher to prepare is now available for you in the teacher edition, all the way from setup to cleanup. You see your chem catalyst question with the responses the students might give. I'm going to flip us through this quickly. You see discussion points in what we call the explain and elaborate portion of the discussion. You can see the chart that we worked on together. You can see the evaluate check-in question. And you can also see all of the answers to the student questions that are in the student textbook. So the teacher edition now has integrated all of your resources into one resource for ease of use in second edition. And for those of you who will look at the package later, we also have the teacher resources that are downloadable are available on the online book companion site. They're also available on a teacher resources flash drive. Let me jump back in and show you an image of all these things. And if you are lucky enough to adopt our new ebook platform, it is called the AdaptText powered by Copia Class ebook. We actually have a teacher edition ebook where all of those TRM buttons, if you are actually on your tablet or online on your computer, in your teacher edition ebook, you can click on those links and those resources are downloadable right there from your teacher edition. So I'm actually going to turn over the conversation to Julie right now to outline the second edition package. So just as we've simplified the entire Living by Chemistry program down to our student edition, which is updated to include current information if data has changed. We've added some new material. We've added some information, a whole chapter on the electromagnetic spectrum, and we've revised a lot of the lessons in the Unit 6 Showtime to move away from chemical demonstrations. Now all of that, all those lessons on equilibrium and reversible reactions will revolve around acid-base chemistry. And so, Julie, why don't I turn this over to you, because Julie is your contact to get a hold of your sales rep if you're interested in samples and want to know what are in the packages. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I've been chatting with quite a few of you privately through the chat feature. My name's Julie Comforti. I'm the marketing manager for science. My email address is jcomforti@bswpub.com. I've typed that in the chat window if you want to copy that down. Be happy to get you in touch with your rep. But just to quickly overview what we have, because I know we only have 6 minutes and we want to leave some time for questions. We do have the print book, but we also have our new platform called AdaptText, which is an ebook. This ebook works on computers, both Mac and PC. It works on tablets, such as iPads and Android tablets. And in the summer, it'll be up and have an app on the phone as well, so both iPhones and Android phones. Those can be purchased standalone, or they can be packaged with the text. And if you order the AdaptText ebook, then you would get the AdaptText Teacher's Edition ebook with that package, and that includes the Teacher's Edition with all of the resources right at point of use, being clickable. But we also have the Teacher's Edition in a print form as well. So I know a lot of you have been typing to me. If anyone has any questions for either myself, for Jeffrey, or for Angie, let us know, and we'd be happy to speak those out loud. If you've asked something recently and I didn't answer it, please paste it in again. All right. Is there any information about how this aligns to NGSS?
I'll take that one. We have right now a working document that we gave to one of our teacher experts to compare to NGSS. So we can show it's sort of a rough alignment to what is outlined in NGSS. Angie, maybe you can talk a little bit about NGSS and how Living by Chemistry is suitable for teachers that are adopting that.
Yeah, and we definitely want to get a good alignment document so that's real clear. But the whole purpose of NGSS is to get students away from memorizing isolated facts that don't make a lot of sense to them and to start to understand underlying concepts, big ideas. And we feel that Living by Chemistry is really helping to support that kind of student thinking, where they're looking at data, they're trying to sort out what it's telling them, and they're making lots and lots of connections from the atomic scale view of chemistry to using that view to understanding things that they're observing in the world around them. So I think it's really well aligned. It's also very well aligned with where AP Chemistry is going now. And by the way, on up, the medical school examination, the so-called MCATs, have changed dramatically away from this kind of fact-based test of trivial multiple choice questions, or not so trivial multiple choice questions, but multiple choice questions, to really pushing student thinking.
Yeah, I'd like to actually to follow up on that, Angie, to say that, and I don't know if I had one of them in my sample, but just to point out that that we do in fact have features like differentiate, which help you to see further how to differentiate for all learners. But we also have pre-AP course tips built throughout this curriculum at this point, because Living by Chemistry is really in line with the way things have changed for the AP Chemistry exam. So now more than ever, Living by Chemistry is appropriate for students who might be taking this as their first chemistry course and then may go on to take an AP Chemistry course, or they may go on in their future to take a college chemistry course or other STEM pathways that they might pursue. So we wanted to let people know that this program has always been designed to help more students, to help all of your students gain a conceptual and a strong understanding of chemistry. And what that can do for them now, even more than ever, is that if they want to, they can choose to move on to take an AP chemistry course or a college-level chemistry course, and they'll be even better prepared for that. And I would also add that, and I don't have an example to show in my sample yet, but we have also added to each unit, we're adding the smaller projects that are focused on the engineering design cycle. So that also addresses the NGSS science and engineering practices component. We want to have, once per unit, we want students to reflect on some chemistry that they've learned and to do a lab or to build something in class with you based on the design cycle and based on some of the chemistry that they have discovered in that unit. So we are addressing engineering design cycle in the new edition, and as always, Living by Chemistry is always focused on science practices as the means to learning chemistry, as much as having all of the chemistry content standards that would be required at a state or a national level. We're also really able to provide teachers with ways to teach the chemistry in a way that I think is more in line with where the direction we're headed for with NGSS and with pre-AP. Are there other questions? We have 1 minute left, and we can stay on as long as people want, but we like to respect your time. So I don't know if we have any other questions for Dr. Stacy. I'll just point out that if you are able to go, we're all going to be in person in Chicago at NSTA. You are welcome to join us at the booth or at an in-person presentation. We're going to be doing a lesson early on from the curriculum called Create a Table, which focuses on the periodic table. And then we will be doing a lesson called or a workshop called What Shape Is That Smell from the second unit. So that's all going to happen coming up next month. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate your interest and enthusiasm about our curriculum. If you have any questions that were not answered today, please feel free. I think, Julie, I sent my email address to you. If you could send it to everybody, feel free to email me and feel free to email Julie. And this is for, if you have questions before you might be considering adopting or while your committees are meeting or after you've adopted the program, I'm always available to help get you in touch with the author if you have specific questions or to help you modify lessons to your needs. So please take advantage of our great team here for Living Back Chemistry. We have a lot of information for you. Thank you, Dr. Stacy, for joining us. We appreciate your presentation, and thank you, Julie, for helping to facilitate this presentation. Are there any final questions?
There is a final comment that I would like to share from Steve. He just added that he would like to congratulate Dr. Stacy on a brilliant and much-needed contribution to chemistry education. He's very impressed.
Well, that's a very nice comment. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Julie, I think I see another comment, too. Is there another one from Melissa?
Yep, I was just going to read that one. It says, "It was great meeting you, Ms. Stacy. My students really get chemistry thanks to your hard work on this curriculum. I'm a big fan."
Thanks. It's a pleasure meeting all of you virtually. I hope that we'll have a chance to interact in person at some point.
We'll have our presence at the NSTA in Chicago, and I believe there may be a follow-up webinar, and we'll be sending out information to you about that in the coming months. And so we're excited to present the second edition of Living by Chemistry, all the great chemistry and lessons that you remember from first edition that's new, updated, and even easier to use. So we hope that you can get some samples and you can talk about this. If you have any other questions, feel free to call or email us. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. I want to say have a great night to everybody.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. And if you'd like any review copies, shoot me a quick email, and I'll get you in touch with your rep.